I first was exposed to the mind of Israel through my work with Yellow Medicine Review. He did a cover for us, and he also had poetry included. And then we had a release party for that issue down in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I got to see Israel in his best light. And as soon as he opened his mouth, before he was done with his first sentence, I knew I was going to do whatever I could to get him here. I just wanted to share him with all of you. So thank you for coming to share Izzy with me. Let me tell you just a little brief something about him. He was born in East Los Angeles to immigrant parents of Mexican descent. He is a recent recipient of the Kindle Project's Maker's Muse Award for his community work. He brings his firsthand knowledge of the realities of migration, U.S. border policies, and life as a Mexican American to his work with families and youth as a mentor, educator, art instructor, ally, workshop facilitator, and activist. Even with a 1.59 high school GPA, Israel managed to go back to the community college and raise his grades to get accepted into the University of California, Berkeley, receiving a degree in English literature and Chicano studies, followed by an MFA in creative writing. He's a founding member of the Alas de Agua Art Collective, an intersectional grassroots art collective that works with Native, immigrant, queer, and people of color artists that have been historically marginalized and creates opportunities to obtain art resources. At formal and informal visual art spaces, Israel creates and collaborates in many interdisciplinary ways, including poetry, performance, music, visual art, and curriculum creation. His work addresses a multitude of historical and spiritual layered realities of border politics, identity politics, and the reinterpretation of histories. Trust me, you are in for a treat tonight. I have not spent 5 minutes with this man that I haven't thought about something in a new way. So the insight, just open yourself up to a level of insight and allow yourself to be uncomfortable at times. It's good to be able to get comfortable with being uncomfortable sometimes. I used to hear that about exercise, but it also applies to Izzy, okay? For example, just on the ride from picking him up in Sioux Falls to here, he introduced me to 3 very powerful concepts, right? One, I asked him about his work with homeless populations, and I said, don't you get tired? And he said, it's the resiliency of their spirit that fills him, right? So the concept of the resiliency of a homeless population made me instantly see homeless people in a different way. Another example, his concept of relentless hope, and I'll let him talk about that for you later. And then I'm sure some of you heard in the classroom today from him as he was visiting, compassionate conflict, right? Before I let him come speak, we have to thank some people for making tonight possible. So thanks go to AOS, to the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, to Club Latino, and to the Creative Writing Program. Thanks, Michelle Nice-Sterner, I see you there. Thanks to Cassie, thanks to Drea for helping hook us up with the open mic that's going to occur tomorrow night, and also with the spoken word workshop that's going to happen on Thursday. So try to dip into those events as well. Now, I'll turn it over to Israel. Welcome.
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Israel. First, I'm just gonna acknowledge the word Minnesota. So recognizing that, Mini is water, and that this is a place of the clear water, and all the ancestors that have been here before a lot of us. So I want to take the time to say that, and to everybody else, all your ancestors that have come through here and settled here, and for those of you that are passing through here like myself, welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Israel. I'm from East Los Angeles, born and raised, and I moved to Santa Fe 10 years ago. And I'm going to talk about different things of that nature, how I got to this point here. And I'm going to use poetry and play and different things. So on that note, I'm going to ask you now if you're willing and able to close your eyes. Don't worry, I'm not going to touch anybody. Open your eyes. Close your eyes. Open your eyes. Don't worry, this gets more uncomfortable. Because of what we do every day. Close your eyes. Keep them closed. Open your eyes. Can you tell me what happened there for you? It's okay. You can be as honest as you can about it. The more honest you are about it, the better off we all are. Anybody? There's no right answer.
Change your outward appearance, and I guess I thought of the many different appearances and different shirts on our backs. I guess that sounds really artsy and sort of dumb, but none of us have one shirt or one appearance, and some appearances make us uncomfortable. Like when you took off your shirt, it made some people uncomfortable, and I guess that's what I felt during that exercise. We have multiple appearances.
Anybody else?
You got scarier as you went.
I got scarier as I went. That's being real.
I think I felt like you got more and more vulnerable, and the deeper you went into that. When you took your shirt off, I thought, wow, he's really being vulnerable here.
Yeah, and that's something we don't do.
Yeah, right.
And I'm going to keep inviting you to. Because I know people are going to get scared. So why are they getting scared? And remember, we're in a space of compassionate conflict. In that sense of let's be honest about what happens, how we think, and what narratives are in our brains and in our beings. What prison narratives, what other narratives we all have. So why is it more vulnerable for me? And why do people get scared? Because I'll tell you that when I go, sometimes when I'm back in my neighborhood, and I'm just waiting on the bus stop, I'll get asked if I'm on probation. But I come from East LA. And because that was such a clear narrative for me growing up, that I started answering questions. Where are you going? Well, I'm going down the block, sir. I'm going to catch this bus and I'm going. Where do you live? And I started answering, and then I realized, wait, I don't have to answer these questions. But I'm so used to answering those questions. And then I sometimes have to say, my name's Israel. I have 3 degrees. I have a master's in English. And I'll watch a cop change their attitude towards me. Oh, yeah? What are you going to do with that? And yet it makes me think about my own agency in that. That I get to say, I have a degree, why are you bothering me? So what happens to a person of color who is on probation, sitting at the bus stop? They can't sit at the bus stop. That's what I think about. Oh, I don't need. Yeah, I can need this. Is this one it? No. There's my little friend. I'm gonna go different places in my experience as a Chicano, in education, Chicano growing up, a Native person, and just time travel with me. This is from my Rorschach test that I'm working on. Chicano Rorschach test. You have $3.50 in your daily transportation and budget for Laney Community College in Oakland. To get to and from, it costs $2.75 to catch the subway to your classes. What do you do to feed yourself? Do you A, steal French fries and other unnoticeable stolen goods from the college cafeteria? B, find the local food pantry. C, get a second job because you are a full-time student, and that's a full-time job. D, find a way to get to school that is cheaper but takes you way more time out of your day, so you are exhausted. E, take the semester off and start to save money. F, figure out 1,000,001 top ramen recipes. You're a Chicano student at UC Berkeley, and your English professor, who is also Chicano, has just informed you that he will actually make it harder for you to pass his English class because it's going to help you in the racist system in the long run. How do you respond? A, do you interrupt him and say, what the? B, get angry and grow silent and walk away, mulling over the layered ways in which this racism finds you in every corner. C, interject and ask him to reconsider what he's doing that contributes to lateral and hierarchical violence inside a higher ed institution. D, you ask him, why is he treating you as if you're a black student with a black professor at Howard University in the 1950s? E, you look him dead in the eye and say, and drop his class. F. Hear the bigger truth of what he's saying, and you push yourself to get that A in his class, despite the fact that it means that you will have to work twice as hard as a white student. Last question for now. your financial aid check is late again. Because the financial aid department doesn't believe your mother makes under $6,000. While you do qualify for financial aid, everyone else who is not as poor as you has already received their reimbursement checks, and they have already bought their books, paid their rent, paid their tuition, and it's the second week of the semester. You're falling behind on your classes. How do you continue the semester? Do you, A, write a check to your dorm and look extremely confused when it bounces? B, steal only the books you will need for the classes until your financial aid kicks in? C, talk to your professors and ask to borrow some books? D, take out a credit card with extreme high interest rates because you have no credit history? E, borrow from your imaginary aunties and uncles that are really rich? F, only take classes with your homies so you can share the books and the other costs? G, take the semester off or quit college because this has been your reality every freaking semester and you can't take it anymore? H, borrow some money from your other homies, pay them with interest, take out more student loans, and get more debt. Does anybody want to respond to anything that I've just said? No. We're in Minnesota. It's okay. It's okay someday. Seriously, anybody want to respond to anything that I've said so far? The space is open. This isn't just the Izzy show. This is the everybody show.
Well, I'm coming back, Tony. I got to ask what I was going to be doing with English majors too. So I think it's part of getting an English degree. People don't value it. Just a thought.
Yes, that is a thought. Anybody else? There's no right or wrong answer here. This is A, B, C, or D.
I just appreciate the honesty when I heard that.
Which part?
Part of dealing with challenges that are very large, like discrimination and communities outside of poverty. Trying to get ahead and face these tough challenges.
People will look and say, well, Israel did it. Why can't you? And they dismiss what it takes for a person of color to get to the same place, in the same time, in the same rhythm. And really dismiss a lot of different layers. Anybody else? Before I start screaming, because I'm about to start screaming. This is about us. This America, part 10. This America is black blood, white blood, red blood, yellow blood, all blood, drawn against the concrete, all along the protest songs before and after Dylan. This song is our freedom song. This blood is our blood of American black bodies being hung and breathing memory into slavery. These wars are our wars, trapped in our DNA of white bodies along the picket lines, alongside Cesar Chavez, white bodies alongside Malcolm X, alongside MLK, black bodies, indigenous bodies, hosed down, attack dogs, burying the memory, burying the proof that something at the back of the bus needed to change, needed changing, that something inside history books, her storybooks, their storybooks, needed changing,
This America doesn't want you to recall white bodies, black bodies, red bodies, yellow bodies being put on the line for our children's children. They want this DNA to go away. Inside this hybridity of slavery, this America is black blood, white blood, brown blood, yellow blood, all blood. This America wants to take away all your mestizo names, all your mixed lineages, all your lineage not set in stone, all your ancestors buried, all your ancestors buried, all your ancestors buried underneath railroad tracks, underneath civil rights movements, underneath a petition sign, underneath Queer America Not Named, underneath concentration camps, underneath family detention centers, Japanese internment camps. This America wants you to forget all that has been spilled, all the blood that has been spilled for you in all directions. Questions, concerns, amendments? What did that poem bring up for you? Because if I don't get any response, that's...
I thought a lot about my grandma. I always think of my grandma. My great grandma was an anchor baby from Mexico, and I talked to my grandma. And I'm like, why didn't we learn about our culture? And she said, because my mom didn't want us to learn about our culture. And there's a joke in my family that we don't eat tortillas in the front yard. And so when you were talking about all those things that they were, sorry, it's been an emotional day. When you're talking about all those things that were hidden away, I just kept thinking of my great grandma and that joke in my family of we don't eat tortillas in the front yard, and how it's not a joke, and how my grandma couldn't celebrate her culture because the racism in Kansas City. So I guess I just appreciate that, the honesty of, because I'm a white girl from South Dakota, but my grandma is not white. My great grandma is not white. So I just appreciate the incorporation of everybody. I may be white, but you don't know what my family is. You don't know what what everyone's been through. So I appreciate that.
Because, yeah, that's me referring back to this America wants to take away all your mestizo names, all your lineage. Anybody else?
Different view, but I'm sorry.
I just thought of all the ways that the government and all of the people just want to forget what has happened in this country, what has just everything that has been wrong and continues to be wrong, and we just want to sweep it under the rug and never think about it and talk about it.
Really interesting twist on the melting pot.
Interesting twist.
That melting pot is a lot hotter than the one we usually hear about.
Say more. He said this melting pot is a lot hotter than the one that we hear about.
Well, there's the romanticized version of the melting pot in America, of everybody coming together and blending together and melting together, and then that creates a great nation. I think your view is much more realistic in terms of how we got there.
More realistic. Anybody else? Thank you. Anybody think it was it's okay. I'll take dumb, stupid over silence. Anybody else? Would it make you think of anything? Anyone? No, I guess I'll go back to being a Mexican jumping bean and singing more poems and see where we go from there. So this is from Mexican Jazz, and Mexican Jazz was written while I was in a detention center in Dilley, Texas, dealing with families that were being detained, children that were being detained. And when I got there, they were training us for 2 days, I think, before we actually got to be there. So I was part of the translation team, and also in the team were lawyers, and also in the team were other community members that wanted to help. And basically our job was to go and talk to, for me, it was to translate while Central American mom told her story to the lawyer, and then I was just in between in that situation. And everybody there as part of the Cara project would basically be working there for free. And for my situation, it was 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. hearing these kind of stories all day of why people are migrating here right now. Because you have to consider a couple of things when we talk about the border and the so-called crisis. And one of the things that you have to consider is what's happening in Central America that would make a woman with her children walk 2,000 miles or migrate 2,000 miles knowing that they were going to be violated once or twice. There's no zero. They know that they're going to be violated, and they're still trekking to get to the border. And two, we have to consider is our role in creating what happened to Central America. Because I'll tell you, growing up in East LA in the 1980s, La Mara, which we talk about, or some of us know about, La Mara, Central American gang, was a very small gang. They did not have a lot of members. But one of the things that we did that festered a situation, and when we talk about restorative justice and the things that we could have done, what ended up happening in that situation is that we basically said, well, they're not Mexican, they're Central American. And since they're Central American, we can't house them with the Mexicans. So you might think, well, what's the big deal? Seems like something really reasonable to do. So at that point, you had, let's say, a really convicted felon, Central American, and let's say a youth who was 16, who got caught with pot. He was put alongside this other young individual, and the original individual told that one, join us or die. Because in order for Central Americans gangs to survive in LA with Mexican gangs and African American gangs and every other gangs that were already there, they had to be crazier. And so we kept doing this. We kept filling up this pot. Instead of providing rehabilitation for these youth, we just kept putting Central Americans in jail. And then we decided to do something even smarter. Even smarter. Even smarter. I'm being sarcastic. We took all of them and we dumped them off in Central America. And now imagine a room this size with twice as many people in a holding cell for days and weeks and months. And then we put more in there for days and weeks and months. And then we put more in there. And then we rinse and repeat. Rinse and repeat. Guess what happened to that little Mara gang from East LA? it turned into the problem that we have right now. That is making women and children flee because 12-year-old boys are, again, in a room like this, but now imagine a classroom, a Mara gang member coming in and saying, you join and die. Teacher's right there. You don't care. You are joining the gang today or die. So this is what's happening right now. Part of what's happening right now, among a whole other layered truth of what's happening. And the asylum crisis that we have. Third point before I start reading these poems, how many have ever heard of the Las Hieleras, the icebox? How many have heard of La Perrera, the doghouse? If you ask Border Patrol about the icebox, they will say it doesn't exist. But when I interviewed every single person that I interviewed and I asked them, were you put in the icebox? They said yes. And what is the icebox? It's a holding cell. Again, like this room. And this holding cell is supposed to be a space for detainees to be held for a couple of hours. But what ends up happening with the lights on for a couple of days is you have people in there for 4 days. And then they move, you ask them, did you go to La Perrera, the doghouse? Remember, these are all women and children. We're not talking about men. And what is the mind trick that we're playing with people when we say we're gonna take you as a woman to the doghouse? And so then they would spend 4 days there, which was very similar to a kennel. And then if you survived all that without signing any deportation papers, then you end up in a detention center that we know, where women and children were being held for months. So it wasn't that they were just like, oh, I came to the border. Oh, now take me to the, I'm a refugee, take me to the detention center. No. This is a process that they go through to get to a detention center. And the last thing that I want to point to in this situation is that once they were in the detention center, mind you, they think I'm part of the detention center. Remember, I'm translating? Remember, there's a lawyer? So they're thinking, wow, we're in America now. We have a lawyer and a translator. We made it. Luckily for me, the lawyer would let me translate to them and tell them, no, señora, no, lady. You've been in America since the icebox, since the Perrera, because guess who they thought was doing that to them? Huh? Mexico. And I get to go, no, señora. And I was fortunate enough, because my job officially there was to just translate. But the lawyers would give me the space to have this little window of 1 minute to break open the consciousness of the level of torture that they had been through and who was responsible for it. Because the first question that I asked them when they were in the detention center was, did your child get medical attention? And they would look at me so excited. They would tell me, sí, es la gloria. La gloria translates to, it's heaven. Mind you, they're in a detention center, and they're telling me, it's heaven, with a really amazing look in their eye, because they bought into that this is heaven because of everything else that they've been through. And they say, this is heaven. And you tell them, did your son or daughter receive medical attention? They're like, yeah. What was it? The doctor, he gave him something. What did the doctor give your son or daughter? Water. This is the games we play in the USA. This is happening right now. This story I'm telling you was not Trump's doing. This was Obama era. So guess what Trump is doing with this weapon now? And if at any point you need to step out, if it gets too uncomfortable, don't feel like you have to stay. Mexican Jazz, Volume 1. Maria crossed the border because they were gonna slit her throat, her hands, her breast, slit her body, after they had finished mutilating it from the inside, the way they did to her sister, to her mother, to her neighbor, to the barrio, next to the village. They call it a family residency center. It's buried a couple of feet into the earth. So off the highway, you can't see it, even though it's less than a mile from the local prison. But you can't see this private prison from the highway. Only the flags that fly high. Homeland Security flag. CCA Private Prison Corporation flag. United States of America flag. Texas flag. These are all the representatives involved in housing innocent children and women in a family residency center, as they claim. It's a prison. Or another niche word, detention center, with children and mothers that have been stopped at the border, detained there in holding cells for days, holding cells that are designed and supposed to be house people for hours, but they are housed there for days, there in what's called las hieleras, the icebox. This is part one. Then they are housed for days in La Perrera, the doghouse, for days. This is part two. La hielera, the icebox. When I was in La hielera, the icebox, it was cold. They didn't give me any blanket, not even one of those aluminum ones, the one that sometimes they give people. I had to sleep sitting because there was not enough space for all of us to sleep. There were no beds, just a cold floor. Some of the women slept near the restrooms because it's a little warmer there. And of course, the children also there on the floor, just like this room. They only gave us to eat a bologna sandwich, cold. While my child got really sick after eating one of those, so he stopped eating, and he got diarrhea. And I would tell the men to tend to my child. I told them to tend to my child, and nobody tended to him. For 2 days, nobody tended to him. The lights were kept on all the time. They wouldn't let us sleep. If somebody wouldn't respond in the night when it was their turn to call them for the interview, they would yell at them, "Maria! Maria! Maria!" And if that person didn't get up, then they would yell at all of us to get up and go to the hallway. "Todos, todos aquí! Bueno, arriba, arriba, para! Afuera, todos!" When I finally talked to the man on the phone, the one who would ask us why we are here, well, the man told me that he didn't care about the problems of my country. that they weren't his problems, that I just needed to sign the papers. Because if I signed the papers, or if I didn't sign the papers, they were still gonna deport me. But I said, if they were still gonna deport me either way, then why the hell would I sign the paper? And when he asked me if I was afraid, I told him yes, I told him I was afraid. And I was going to tell him all the things that were happening in El Salvador, but he didn't let me. And the lawyer, Allegra Love, she's the one that showed me where he lied. He said that I told him that I was coming to the United States to work. I never said that. That I came here for the better future of my children. I never said those things. I told him I was afraid. I told him I was very afraid. I told him I couldn't return to my country. I told him I can't return to my country. This part is directly from the website of the corrections. I've just changed the acronym so they can't sue me. We here at BCA, Border Corrections of America, we are here to service our community. We are a public-private partnership. Please, people misinterpret who we are, what we are doing, getting involved with detaining children and women in Texas. We are providing a safe place for them to be held. Our company is the first of its kind. It was founded in 1983. Our approach to public-private partnership in corrections combines the cost savings and innovations of business and like-minded individuals like yourself. Businesses with strict government guidelines and a constant oversight by the government. This has produced proven results for more than 3 decades. Our company designs, builds, manages, operates prisons, jails, detention centers, and residential re-entry centers. On behalf of the Federal Bureau of Prisons, Immigration and Customs informants, the United States Marshal Services, many states and counties across the country, we benefit America by protecting public safety, employing the best people in solid careers, preparing inmates for re-entry, giving back to communities, building innovative security to government corrections, all the while, constantly saving hardworking taxpayer dollars. We are America's leader in partnership corrections. We have integrity and are helping keeping this country safe in the most affordable ways. We will remember this like we remember the Japanese internment camps. We will remember family detention centers. We'll sit back in the back of our throats like the horrors and atrocities of American nightmares. All the silenced children being placed in prison. All the silenced mothers being placed in prison for running for their lives. Questions, concerns, dilemmas. Anything come up for people? Y'all can tell me that didn't do something. Yes.
That earlier deportations, Obama, and then previous to that, I've been reading a lot about this, and I guess there were ice boxes that would keep immigrants really, really cold. I mean, even back to the 50s, I think. But what I'm wondering is, so I'm trying to figure out the headset of these maniacs who are, you know, these insane psychopaths who are running this country right now. And is it white supremacy? Is it,
Ding.
yeah, and then is it also, we,
Ding.
okay.
Keep going. Keep going.
Well, is it also, you know, we want, the people who are running it, the ruling class, want all the stuff. And so if they let in anybody else who needs stuff, then those of us who are sitting here are going to have our lives squeaked, you know, ground to fine powder. They want to make sure that they can eke out the little bit for the lives of people living here, the white people or whatever. And then just not let anybody else in. Because I feel like it's partly, I've read about those people who say, you know, the earth can only support so many billions of people, so we've got to start exterminating some in that laissez-faire way. So I don't know, just throwing some stuff out that's...
Yes, no, maybe so. The last one I'll say, it's a maybe, but I'll say more that it's what we've always done to immigrants. Right now, we just happen to be the target. Saying we as in a Mexicano, as a Mexican American, as an anchor baby. Because before that, who was it? Asian Americans. Before that, who was it? Italian Americans, Japanese Americans, African Americans. It's like everybody takes a turn being that scapegoat. That's part one, right? That we always want this scapegoat. Now, let's talk about capitalism. How does capitalism function? How do you get your awesome Walmart stuff? Yes, by cheap labor. Where does this cheap labor come from? Right on the other side of that border. So if really the idea was to build a wall to create a space where people don't get through, then capitalism here would just cease to function. Because our everybody that's what is it? California is the 5th largest economy. California is the 5th largest economy in the world. Why? Migrant labor and all our vegetables that supply everybody here and everybody over there. These are the realities of if you want that 99-cent kale, then you got to figure out how you're going to get that 99-cent worker. And when you have a family that's it's going to do whatever it takes because 99 cents is better than 3 cents over there, and yet with NAFTA, we created this dependent relationship. We created maquiladoras. Does anybody know what a maquiladora is? Maquiladoras are sweatshops that are in Mexico that have created your Samsungs, your iPhones, your all this stuff. We kind of think that it's all just happening over there somewhere, overseas somewhere, and yet we have a bunch of people that are making stuff for you in just across the other side of the border, in Juarez, in Chihuahua, in not even like down south, just like bink, right over the border. And that's where all these people come to. And then you have this whole, that's just part one. Part two is all these other people that are coming because they're fleeing a very dangerous situation. I'll tell you one story because so we had to document each family if they got soap, if they got aluminum foil for a blanket, if they got some food, if they, and mind you, I'm doing this for 12 hours straight, and every single one of them is telling me the same thing, and what do you think is going through my head? When do we stop documenting this? I'm sure we have thousands of incidences of the same thing. Why are we documenting these things? So why are we documenting them? Does anybody have an answer for me? Because I don't understand why we have tens of thousands of incidences of things trailing back to 1950 of the Border Patrol doing this type of behavior, and yet we still can't stop this. Why? In part because we call another human being an illegal. The moment that we use this language, is my mom a human being to you? And I'm literally asking you, is my mom a human being to you? When you start using language like illegal. No. So now when we use that over and over, now these children, now remember that I told you they were training us. And one of the first things that they told us was, you're gonna see children in a prison. And you're gonna wanna hit a security guard. And I thought, me? I'm Israel. I don't want to hit nobody. I love people. And they warned all of us that as soon as you see that child, when you walk through those doors, because we're not part of that institution, but when you walk through that institution and you see a child this big behind bars, you will want to hit somebody. And it's true. And you wonder, why are they participating? So this one I do want you to answer. Why are they participating?
I've been told to.
They've been told to. Why else?
So they can make money to buy their stuff from Walmart.
So they can make money, so they can buy their stuff at Walmart. Why else?
Power.
Huh?
They have power and they get to do whatever they want. They might like to do their neighbor next door, but now they actually can.
Right. It's this fake power. Because before that, I didn't have a job. Now the detention center moved in, and I get to keep those damn immigrants that have been stealing my jobs locked up, and I get a job, and I get to put them in their place. You see that? Fake power, fake realities. And yet, they're walking in day after day, looking at moms, looking at children, locked up, day after day. What if that was your sister? What if that was your brother? What if that was your little cousin? What if that, oh wait, we're all related. That is your little cousin. That is your brother and sister. But you remember the Japanese internment camps? History repeats itself until we break the mold. I think I have something lighthearted somewhere in here. Does anybody else have anything to share or any other kinds of questions?
Appleton, Minnesota, a few years ago, thought about, they wanted to do some economic development there. And they thought about what they might do to get some economic development there. And they thought, well, you know, pickle factory, or let's build a prison. We're going to build a prison. We're going to get Corrections Corporation of America in here to manage it. And we're going to build a prison, and then we'll be able to have great economic development in Appleton, Minnesota. As it turned out, eventually the prison closed. I spent some time there organizing the workforce, and for a while they were the only Union Corrections Corporation of America prison in the country for a while. And the whole concept of making money off of other people's misery is grotesque to me, but that's exactly what they're doing. And it's not just at the border. It's in Appleton, Minnesota. It's in Ohio. At the point where they finally managed to break the union there and run them out was when the Corrections Corporation of America cut a deal with AFSCME, the union that I was working for, and they said, we'll stay out of Youngstown, Ohio, and out of that prison if you get that guy out of Appleton. And AFSCME said, all right, it's a deal, we'll do that. That lasted a year. They moved into Youngstown, they moved into other prisons, and they're the largest private prison corporation in the world, not just in the United States, in the world. They've got prisons all over the world. So it's an international private prison company. And the border is not the only place they're locking up women and children. That's what I have to say.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I'm gonna take you out of this rabbit hole. Trust me. We're on the spaceship, on the Chicano visionary organic poetry machine. And we're gonna go really cool places. Does anybody have any other thoughts around what's been said? Oh.
Well, it's just a comment about Japanese Americans interned. My father's Italian American. World War II, he joins the Army, stationed in Walla Walla, never leaves the country. And fellows that he went to high school with that were Japanese American were interned, volunteered for the Army, and fought in Italy. And you know, my father never forgot the irony of that. And the other thing is that growing up, we were never allowed to say we were Italian American. My dad would say, anytime they want to know what nationality you are, they're going to put you on a bus and put you in camp. So we were told to say we were American. So anyway, just a thought.
Not a good thought, but it's important thought.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Last call. Last call. Just kidding. I'll be asking for more questions, concerns, dilemmas, propaganda, etc. Israel's a Debbie Downer. I can't believe we paid for him to come make us feel like God. What is the point? So what I'll tell you that when I was at the detention center and they told me, like literally me, right, they're training everybody, and they turn to me and they go, if Israel here goes into the detention center today and he decides to put all of this on Facebook tomorrow, guess what we're gonna do? Bye, Israel. I was like, what the hell, why am I getting singled out? I just got here, what the hell, you don't even know me. Oh, well, you do, yeah, that's right, I was gonna post it on Facebook. And then they're like, it took us so long to get into that detention center. We can't run the risk of this getting out while you're here, Israel. Now, once you leave here, please spread the word. Once you leave here, so part of the Cara project is not just to come volunteer, is to come tell the stories. And why tell the stories? Why spread the word? What's the purpose of power of poetry in motion? So, remember I told you I was going to take you in a time machine? We're marching for education in California. It's almost 50 years since Brown versus the Board of Education. Right? And we're marching because at this moment, Arnold Schwarzenegger is our governor.
All right.
And at this moment, he's saying to Californians, we're gonna give all California educational system $2 billion. And guess what we knew? Hey, Mr. Terminator, you were actually supposed to give us $4 billion. So what happened with this $1 billion for public education? In Richmond High, where I used to work, we lost the counselors. We lost the libraries. We lost the psychologists. We lost the sports teams. What the? Somebody had to get up in arms. So we marched from Richmond, California, all the way to Sacramento. And it takes us about 7 days. And during this march, we take with us children that are being affected by this budget cut. And it's called the March for Education. And we're marching. And during our march, guess what we bear witness to? The prisons, going all the way towards the state capitol. And what do the children notice? Hey, this prison looks better than my school. And he wasn't joking, because at that moment in time, prison to education was $5 to $1. $5 to prisons, $1 to education. So here's the tricky part of what people don't understand about when the government takes over a school. It doesn't just take over a school first. Here's the pimp game. You watch the school, and you watch it fail. Then guess what you say? Hey, looks like you're doing really crappy in your educational system. But guess what the government has for you? Some loans with high interest rates. Go ahead and handle your business. And then guess what happens again? School gets into debt and fails again. Then the government takes over. So not only did they take over, but now you owe them high interest loans. Right? So we're marching up to Sacramento. And we get there, and it's day 8 or 9, and we're marching over there. And the first thing that strikes me is that nobody's gonna be there waiting for us. And we're gonna have to fast. So sure enough, we've been marching all this time. And I don't mind, as an adult, that my governor wasn't there, because I marched 70 miles over, 7 days. But I did mind, and it did break my heart, that I had 6-year-olds with me, that I had 10-year-olds with me, and the governor was not there, and the governor's representatives were not there. So we take our march back to Oakland, and we decide to fast. So now we're not the March for Education. We're on the fast for education. And we spend the first 10 days in Oakland. And then at that point, we move it over to Sacramento. Right? And when we move it over to Sacramento, we're getting greeted by so many amazing people. And we're getting called the starving teachers. So mind you, all the senators are like, hey, they come by us too. They're like, how long do you think the starving teachers are gonna last here, huh? How long do you think they're gonna last here, huh? Look, they're all trying to starve for education. How long are they gonna last here? Now I'm thinking in my head, do I wanna die for this? And it's day 18. Dolores Huerta joins the party. So now we got real political power behind us. Because now we have Dolores Huerta, who is a famous farmers, workers, marching movement. Now she's going up to bat for us, right? And then it's day like 24, and we started off with like 9 people. Now we're down to like 3 people. It's me, Cesar Cruz, and Yasi Watsin. And Dolores tells Yasi Watsin, hey, this is your 25 days into this. I think you need to bow out, because this is a danger to your womb, to your reproductive system. It's not worth it. So now there's 2, right? And now it's actually like a day before 50 years, what is it? Brown versus the Board of Education. And what happened in Brown versus Board of Education? We had the Arkansas 9. Does anybody know who the Arkansas 9 are? They're literally the first black children that marched through those doors and break segregation. Remember? Tanks. Remember? Kids getting called so many things. And one of them means Minnie was like 6 foot something. And there I am, 25 days into a fast. And I look up, and there's Minnie, the same woman 50 years before that broke segregation. And she's in tears. She's in tears, and she's saying to me, you're so brave. You're so brave. Crying. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm brave. I'm just not eating. And I asked Dolores for a notebook. I asked her for a notebook because I want to tell this woman, you're calling me brave. You're calling me brave when you walked into classrooms, 6 foot tall, child, 16 years old, not knowing 50 years later I would be fighting the same battles. For all the times that somebody threatened your life, for all the times somebody called you the N-word, and you went in there, day in, day out. And I write this poem. And remember, they're still calling us the starving teachers over there. And I asked Dolores, can you give this to Minnie, please? So the day she's supposed to be reading a speech, and she turns to the audience. She says, I'm not going to read that speech that I wrote. I'm going to read this poem instead. And she read that poem, and what they told me was that there wasn't a dry eye in the house. And those senators who had been ignoring us gathered in the back of the room and said, what are we going to do about those teachers? And the very next day, they finally sat at the table to negotiate. And the very next day, we stopped the Senate floor. And the only other time that Senate floor in California had been stopped at that point was Black Panthers with guns. And we did it with fasting and poetry. This is the power of your words. When you place them and you give truth to power. So every time you sit down and we talk about Artivate, when I talk about Artivate and when I talk about poetry saving lives, when I talk about art changing things, it's not a metaphor. It's real. I told you I'd take you out of that rabbit hole. Damn! You're like, what time is it? Because it's almost 8:30 and I'm feeling queasy. Talking about detention centers and racism and I like Walmart and I like 99-cent kale and I like my shoes and my Nikes and my Coca-Cola and Charlie with that fool. I hate them. Poetry's real, love.
I don't even remember what I was going to read to you. It's going to be a happy poem. Oh, sorry. Any questions, concerns, dilemmas, feelings? I know you're feeling something. Anybody want to say anything? Damn, man. I can't. How many miles do you think it's from Santa Fe to here? Huh? Look at him. Look at him. Just like, it's Tuesday, dog. You do the work. I like your stories. I like your East LA style. What am I going to do here? What am I going to do with you? That's all right. I've been around this long enough to know that you're listening to this truth, to power. I've been around long enough to know that you hear what I'm saying to you, of the power we have as people. I've been around this long enough to know that you know what you can do with your hands, with your words, with your creative power. Because this is what they want to take away from you. That you lose your worth and you lose your creation. That you lose your sense of being creator. That you lose your sense of being creator. Creation. And become consumed. Know your worth. Power to the people.
Right on.
We the people, we the two-legged, recognize, we the winged, we the snake people, we the tree nations, we the Mother Earth as a living being, we the Mother Earth as a living being, we recognize the vibration and life of water. We the people, we the two-legged, five-fingered, and all the variations of us recognize that without water there is no life. Recognize, we reconstitute old treaty between old nations of these Americas beyond your America of United States, these Americas of Alaska, of Canada, of South America, of Latin America, of America. We the people recognize all people, walking nations, flying nations, hummingbird nations, butterfly nations, nations of eagles and condors, confederations of mountains, mountain nation peoples. We the people, peoples that have lived underground in refuge, in underground railroads. We the people recognize the debt handed over to all the peoples in debt of this sovereign nation. All the debts handed to native peoples of burned and broken treaties, all the enslaved Africans and their descendants, all the chains handed to them over and over, all the empty promises of 40 acres and a mule on stolen land, all the empty promises of American dreams handed over to any hyphenated Americans. Asian Americans enslaved on the railroad, Mexicans enslaved in bracero programs, sent back to Mexico under Operation Wetback. We the people recognize all these histories, their stories, histories, and all the layers of truth needing reconciliations, while the Mother Earth, with all her children, whether we speak human languages or not, all her children recognize the breath of life, the entity we call air, and the necessity to keep that spirit clean and free of toxicity. We, the people, recognize the layers of trauma and healing needing to be repaired and choose to move forward from here as the people of all nations, all colors, all creeds, all differences, all the layers of racial anxiety needing to be bridged, all the layers of humanity needing to be bridged, all the layers of our consciousness needing to be bridged, all the layers of displacement we have caused other nations to face, other nations abroad, and recognize deer nations, elk nations, horse nations, buffalo nations, all the four-legged nations displaced across this nation and abroad in efforts to manifest a lie of destiny that we are now re-manifesting, re-visioning, reimagining another destiny, freeing ourselves, seeking our true freedom, not another system of labor that does not bind us to enslavement of ourselves as workers and others as workers, and give back to everyone, every living entity, their peace and their dignity, their names and their layered ancestry, their repercussions of dismantling and remantling, reconfiguring this America, this Turtle Island, of all Turtle Islands relations, this America of us, this America of them, this America needing to heal itself unto itself for the sake of moving forward for all life, for all generations to come, seeking reciprocity, true emancipation, truth and reconciliation, not waiting another 200 years or more to be rewritten. Always come back to the notion that these nations are not nation states, that these tribes and these families are big and small tribes and families, communities and cities and states need to have principles of self-governing that will help heal their histories, their stories, her stories, of self-governing that can help heal themselves, of self-governing that can help recognize their multiple intersectional forms of identity, forms of politics and thought, religion and gender, prayer and science and art and cultural formations that allow for the fluidity of being amongst each other, amongst other local and national self-governing nations, seeking, always seeking true freedom, true for the diversity of self-governing bodies in a way that does not harm others, seeking what is true freedom for the diversity of self-governing bodies, and place non-linear and linear ways of thinking and being as equal, holding them as relevant manifestations to our wholeness as being, as part of living, breathing organism that we call Earth, that we are one inside this oneness, that we are one with this Earth and all the parts of her that make Mother Earth a living, breathing being, all the layers of her that make her body and being, that we remember all the rape and pillage done to her first, and all the rape and pillage that has been done to her children, all her children, and begin to heal and reconcile and create layers upon layers upon layers upon layers upon layers of harmony, upon layers upon layers upon layers of harmony that we take generations to manifest, but we acknowledge that we are in the process of stepping forward and movement in stepping into our steps, our bodies, our minds, our beings, our spirits, our consciousness, and every action taking forward, that this is our collective responsibility, that this is our collective consciousness, that this is our local and universal environment.
Okay, class. Now guess what's going to happen? You turn to your partner. Pick one on the right or one on the left. And you talk amongst yourself for the next 2 minutes. And then when I clap, you switch off. So pick a partner, pick a partner, pick a partner. Who's A and who's B in your new symbiotic relationship? Pick an A and pick a B. So B is going first. Woo! So ready? B is talking, A is listening. That's it. Don't interrupt. I'm looking at you, Doc. Don't interrupt me. Whatever came up for you. you guys switch?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
You rock and roll?
I didn't say switch. No, I'm just kidding. Does anybody want to share? Please. What came up for you guys? Share. Oh, here's the only rule. Share what came up for you. I saw you were going to cheat us there. Looking at you. You were going to share what she said. But you can't. You've got to share what you said.
The biggest thing that I've been thinking throughout all of this speeches is, where do we even start? And that's not really a question that can, I mean, we all have to answer that for ourselves, but I see that you also have it. And I think that this is a perfect place to start, that it's talking about it and that it's getting the information out there.
What else? What you can do about it?
I honestly have no idea.
Think small. Don't think big. That's what's killing us.
That's true.
Keep looking at Trump like he got something. He's just part of a machine that's been going on forever. Don't look that way. Look here. So what are you gonna do?
Start with yourself. You
What are
gotta.
you gonna do? I know I'm being so sure. Great. Comes to mind. You just keep saying, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? What's the smallest thing that you can do? Don't look anywhere else. What can you do? Great. What can you do? I'm gonna come back to you.
Okay. You want the bank back?
What did you say?
It said create.
Create. Create. Create what? Create. Anything. Anything. This is what's going to cause you to fear and consume. Consume and fear. Fear. You can create. Create friendship. Create a piece of art. Create some poetry. Create a club. Create an open mic. Create
A discussion.
a discussion. Create. Looking all y'all because I need y'all. I didn't come here to leave them handed. I'm dropping seeds. Dropping poetry to activate. Dropping art to activate. I'm not here for Joe Jackson. Look at how Israel does really cool poetry. Yeah, I know. But it's about something bigger. That you have power. We meet every Wednesday, 5:30. Wednesday. That's my only guideline. I gotta be there at 5:30. Sometimes it's one person. Sometimes for the Women's March, I had like 50 plus people in a packed little room. We had little kids running around and box cutters everywhere, and I was like, we have people that don't get along in there just like merging, because I'm Switzerland. Everybody's like, yeah, I might get just be Switzerland. I've opened the space, Art Jam, Wednesdays, 5:30. That clockwork, 5:30. Until I can't, and then I'll ask somebody else, step in please. Because this isn't about this next year. This is about my sustainability for 7th generation. So I have to know what that looks like. It's not about me. We'll be there 5:30. Are you down? Because I say that. Are you down? I'm going to be there 5:30. But I'm saying it like this. Are you down or what? And what happens? Because people get on Facebook. I'm down. But, I got stuff to do. But next Wednesday, I'm down. It's just so funny how people get triggered. And I'm just saying, you're down. You're not. It's okay. I don't need you. I'm going to be there. And you know what that looks like for you, showing up for the people. Because now it's on Thursdays, we do this thing called The Thing. And it's a writing group.
But in that writing group, we barely talk. It's really about people writing. So we show up, get together at 5:30, and we start writing. And then when I see people like kind of fading out, I'm like, okay, somebody want to share real quick? Somebody shares a little bit, somebody else shares, and then okay, cool, let's go back in that cave. It's like my introvert, extrovert space, right? That I get people there. On Tuesdays we do drawing. We just show up to somebody else's spot, and we're there drawing. And that was the easiest. We just show up with a notebook, and we're drawing, and we're talking, and we're sharing, and we're creating. And what do you think about doing an event next week? Yeah, cool. Because I hate meetings. You wanna like destroy my creativity? Get me to go to the meeting about the meeting about the meeting about the meeting. I'm like, let's make, and talk. Let's create, and do. Yeah, cool. Let's do that. 2 months from now, cool. Sounds good. Boom, we're done. Put it on Facebook. Gone. Next. So what does that look like for you? You're the only one that can answer that. What else came up for folks?
Nothing. They talked. This is gonna be my poem when I go home. Minnesota. They talked and they talked. And I got there. And I hadn't slept, seriously, since yesterday. Since 3 yesterday. That's a whole other poem. But this is the truth. I haven't slept. And he asked him to share when he went to all these classes. And they talked for 10 minutes. And they grew silent in that process. Anybody else want to share?
I was thinking about how often memory came up, and the importance of like what our predominant national memory is, that we're always in this conflict, right? This fight over what we're going to remember, and how important that is, because our memories shape how we see what's happening now. So if we've forgotten something, right, then when we see something, we're not going to be reminded that, oh yeah, this has already happened, or something similar to it has already happened. And so how important it is to fight for not just the memory of internment, of enslavement, but also the memory of resistance to internment and slavery, because I know it's easy to feel hopeless when all you remember is internment, enslavement. And so you also have to remember resistance, whether it be big resistance or it be things that seem much more achievable.
So it's called White Liberal Antics Poems and Barrio Santos. Because it does have to be balanced. I do have to remember all different parts of the history, her story, their story. And know that poetry is what? The people's history. Poetry is the people's history. Anybody else? Thank you.
Anyone. He walked sleepless.
I hope I'm not keeping the students from talking.
Jeez.
Yeah. I just, I think of that sign that I've seen a little girl hold up. It's been on Facebook. If you build a wall, my generation's gonna tear it down. And that's these guys, yeah. And I just think, I'm old enough to remember the 60s that were not the 60s, if people understand what I mean. I mean, most of us think of the wild and crazy 60s, but most of the 60s were not wild and crazy. and I see these groups marching for climate change in Europe. All these young people were out in the streets, and then the Parkland students and all of their colleagues. And I just think there's a sea change. And I think it's darkest before the dawn, if you want to throw out a terrible cliche. But I have a lot of optimism. So,
Because it's happening. The difference is that you don't see it happening because it's happening so many times over and over that it feels like nothing happened. But we had massive youth movements. We had women's marches that are just massive on a whole other scale. But we're so used to our Facebook feed and everything being under 3 minutes that we can't really see that we're pushing forward. We're moving forward, and we've been moving forward. And for me, it was like Trump got elected, I was like, I know, you think I'm crazy. But I was like, I can say white supremacy and nobody's gonna trip on me. But before Trump was elected, I was like, gosh, that Israel guy, that goes with this white liberal supremacy again. It's not that bad, Israel. We have Obama, we have all these other resources. I'm like, come on, no. So now I'm tripping, right? And I'm trying, this is one thing that I haven't put on Facebook that I want to put on Facebook, and it's on here, but that's okay because I could delete that later on, is the fact that everybody's getting all excited because we have all these women in Congress. That's dope, hell yeah. But my other flash mind is like, damn, really? First Muslim American woman now? Damn, first Native American Congress, what? But yeah, props, Obama. But it's like, really, what? It's like, don't get fooled by the veil. What are you gonna do locally to create, to manifest, to do things? But we're doing things. And if it's one thing that, because sometimes I've been like the last 6 months I had to really reflect. Cause I'm like, am I going crazy? Am I going crazy? Because I'm like, yeah, let's do this. And then some people are showing up like, I don't know, Israel, what are we doing? And then I was going crazy with that thought and I realized, oh, I know what it is. I know what's wrong with me. I finally figured out what's wrong with me. I have relentless hope. I have relentless hope for the generations of my ancestors, of your ancestors, that fought, that bled, that got hung, that got burned, that prayed so I could be here talking to you. And I know that's what I have. And I'm trying to plant that in you. Questions, thoughts, concerns, dilemmas, propaganda. I tried so hard and they didn't want to talk to me. But if I go talk to your neighbor, they're like, oh, that guy's crazy. Oh, I can't believe he said all that. Oh my God. Oh, did you hear him? I think he farted when he was saying that last poem about Chicano. I don't know what. I don't even know what he's saying half the time. What do you think? You're right, dude. Does anybody have any questions for me as we are wrapping up this amazing session of the Chicano Poetry Organic with KO that's 99 cents machine, Chicano machine.
Got a question about your relentless hope. So does it come from within you? Do you have to choose it every day? Both?
So part of it is like just me just believing, like, but because I've seen it, like with the story that I told you about, all of a sudden I'm standing in front of Mimi. How the hell did I end up right here? She's crying, telling me like, you're so brave. I'm like, hell no, dude, right? Or that I went to a poetry reading and then this crazy lady's over there and she's like, let's take that guy to Minnesota. Right? And it's not to act like every day is like, woohoo! Because it's burning. And it hurts. But I also, for me, part of it is like, I pray, I have sweat lodge. I have to have a source. That there's something in you, you believe me or not, it's up to you. There's something in you that nothing else can be filled with. not your thoughts, not your mind. There's something in you, and this is what one of my uncles who's a sun dancer told me. It's like, there's something in you that you cannot feel with anything else. So that's what I feel it with. I feel it with going and hanging out with people. I go and feel it with, like, let me go hang out with a homeless youth who's like 2 days of out, no food, and then showing up to school. And I got a teacher telling him that he doesn't care about school. He hasn't been here in 2 days. And I'm like, he hasn't eaten in 2 days and he's in your classroom. Damn. Right? And so it's like feeding off of this reciprocity that we are to each other. That's where I get it. When I hear poetry, when I hear other people, and knowing that just like me, somebody somewhere dropped a poem, did a piece of art, and it changed me. I was coming to this campus today, and I was seeing him again, Julio, and I was seeing him ripping up the mic, and I was like, I don't remember what he's saying, but I remember what it did to me. Right? And that I know when I go into a space like this, that I'm dropping seeds, and I don't know who, there's probably that person that just left, who 5 years from now is going to be standing right here. And again, truth to power, they're going to be standing right here, giving that seed to people. Right? It's like it's everywhere. But I have to look for it because they're trying to take that away from me. They're trying to make me fear, and they're trying to make me consume, and they're trying to act like I don't got enough. That I don't got enough love. I got it for days. I got it for days, but they want me to close it up. They want me to act like there's not enough right there. And so sometimes I say things that trigger people like, rare. And that's not what I'm really talking about is the science of your heart, of your love. And how that manifests in you, that's you. Is it meditation? Is it something that calms you? What does that look like that that's yours? That's my short answer to relentless hope. Any other questions, thoughts, concerns, dilemmas? Porque ya son casi las 9.
But you gotta drop a beat this time.
No, you don't want me to do that.
I'll do it.
You do it, I'll do this. Anytime, when you want to do it. Cultural appropriation.
Yeah?
Yeah. Talk to me about cultural appropriation. I hear people say to me, you can't write about a Chicano. You can't write like you're black. You can't write. So write what you know. Well, what I know is I've observed things.
So what do you know? What do you know?
Yeah, I guess cultural appropriation. It's a sin, I hear. I don't necessarily believe that. That's curious about your opinion.
It's about permission. It's about permission that we give ourselves, it's about permission that we take from others, right? It's like, am I embedded in hip hop? Right? Me personally, hell yeah. That shit saved my life. Am I gonna go do an album? Maybe. Drop it in tomorrow. Right? Am I gonna sing a native song because an uncle taught it to me and passed tobacco and we did it in a legitimate way? Or am I gonna, because I YouTubed it, and now I think I'm like, I know that native tune, hey-ya, hey-ya. So it's a line there. There is a line there. But you have to figure out what that permission is in you. But then you gotta figure out what's true to you. What's true to you, right? It's like, where do you come from? And I'll tell you what my uncle told me. Do you know where you come from? And I'm like, I'm a Mexican. He's like, yeah, but do you know where you come from? And I'm like, Mexico? And he's like, do you know where you come from? That's that compassionate conflict. He wasn't being antagonistic, but he was asking me like, come on, homie, do your homework. Who are your ancestors? Where are you from? Where are you from?
Where are you from? You're from somewhere. Where are you from? Claim it. Claim that Mexican mom, Mexican grandmother. Claim all your ancestors. Claim it white, black, red, but figure it out. I'm gonna go look up on ancestry.com. If you use every single one of those systems, they're gonna give you something else. I'm telling you because my friend just did that. He did like, his name's Daniel Banks, and he did like 7 of them. And each one came up with some crazy stuff. But he was like, you know what, this one, and he's half black, half Portuguese. He's like, this one right here feels true to me. Right? So you have to look at, but you have to look and ask yourself, where are you from and what do you represent? Who are you willing to die for? Then you can talk about appropriation and non-appropriation. I think. That's just my very short answer. With 10 minutes and counting. She wants me to read the mom poem.
So I apologize, I wasn't here for your whole meeting. Can you really tell, I'm interested in knowing how many people know what cultural appropriation is. Can you talk about that? That term is used, but I wonder if people know.
How many people here know what cultural think they know what cultural appropriation is? Don't get scared to raise your hand. So nobody else feels they know what cultural appropriation is? All right, let's see. Dun, 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 dun. What is cultural appropriation? You raise your hand and say, make me look back. Who else raised their hand? Now everybody's going to be like, someone who hasn't.
Cultural appropriation is like appreciation for the culture.
Why not?
Huh?
Why not?
So it's kind of like how when we jack other people's culture. And jack, I mean steal. And steal, I mean like, I'm going to wear this, what?
Hawaiian night.
You wear leis,
Right?
sacred skirts.
The sacred skirts, and I'm gonna be like, yeah, what's up? I know what this is. I'm flaunting it. Yeah, that's me. I know what's up with this guy. And I don't have no context of the history of why that is. Can someone give me another example? I'm gonna sport what?
Sombreros.
Sombreros. Woohoo! Cinco de Mayo. Woo! Cinco de Mayo. Yeah, I'm celebrating culture right now. Woo! Yeah, no.
You know that?
Headdress, right? Coachella time, what? Coachella time, sexy bikini, and I got the headdress. Woo, woo, yeah, No. What else? Give me one more. I'm having fun with those. Thanks. How many people now think they understand what cultural appropriation is? We're going to have to send this room until everybody raises it. That's good. That's good.
What about this month?
What about this month?
February.
Yeah, what about it?
Black History Month?
Black History Month, yes. Yes. Remember, this is a space for compassionate conflict. I'm not here to like hell no. Don't, shit. Speak your truth.
Well, it's Black History Month.
Yes.
And we give them the shortest month of the year.
Yes.
And
Ain't that some raises in?
besides that, and then Martin Luther King Day. But I think that's in January.
Yeah.
But anyways, what do we really learn about it?
Yeah. Thank you. Right?
And then everybody thinks, well, I went to MLK Day, so yeah, power to the people. But like, why did you do it? You have to ask yourself, what is my real intention? What is my real purpose when celebrating another culture? It's easy when I throw the, woo, Cinco de Mayo, that's easy. What's not is when you're sporting and you're rocking something that you can, but why? You have to ask yourself why. And what's up with those moccasins? oh, my cousin who's native, he gave me those and cool. But if you just, like, you have to look at those things. You have to look and say, what is my reason, right? And we're a melting pot, like you were saying. But it's a melting pot that we have to see and like, oh, some of this stuff, does it all blend together? Does it all mix together? Or is that somebody's? And I'm just rocking it. And I'm just rocking it, whatever. And that's somebody's sacred object. That's the kind of questions you have to ask yourself. Anybody else? Any other questions? 3, 2. I'm just kidding. And we're here till 10:30. Yes,
I haven't slept in more than 24 hours, and Charlie, if you're gonna sleep tonight.
I'm just kidding. Any other questions, concerns, dilemmas? Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. But this is also when I'm talking about compassionate conflict, and it starts feeling a little way, and we make room for that. We have to make room for that on all levels. Like I was in a class earlier, and somebody's like, I'm talking about the border, and they're like, yeah, those illegals, and I'm writing illegals on the board because I want to see where this conversation is going. I didn't right away go like,
you can't say illegal. It's a freaking immigrante crossing the border like you're
No, I just said, oh, cool, yeah, illegals. Let's see where this is going. To have compassionate conflict, right? Because we're in an age right now where everybody's like, and then you get on your Facebook and you're like, Charlie with this. Oh, I disagree. Oh, I disagree. And then you look and you see that you're like, ooh, I know where this rabbit hole's going. Oh, damn, oh, snap. Oh, wait, they're on the same team, they agree. Well, how did that happen? Because it's not compassionate conflict, that's conflict. And in school, we learn how to be right. In school, I learned how to argue the shit out of arguing. I'll argue. Who wants to stay up here till midnight? I'll argue the shit out of argue with you. Blue, no, red. I'll tell you what, red. Or, wait, what do you mean blue? Why blue? Oh, why red? Oh. This is true that I said red and blue. I wasn't even trying to go there, but what? Compassion conflict. Anybody else?
I was thinking about the fact that there's a number of students in here that are going to be future educators, and for some of them, this is the first time they've engaged in conversation like this. And so, with your own experience of working with children, like what are things that you had to learn walking into a classroom with children, or just in general doing art with them? What are things that you had to learn to help you become a better educator?
So with depends on when we're talking kids, what age are you referring to? Because my mind goes to different ages. Because I was kind of tripping, there was a little baby here, and I was like, oh snap, I'm going to say some stuff. I'll try not to curse. Because I do right away, I've been conscious of that child. Because that child is innocent, right? And going back to what you're saying about histories and traumas and telling the positive, it's like, I don't need to traumatize a child. As much as I want them to know the truth, a child needs to be a seed that gets bred with hope, relentless hope, right? And then there's an age when they shift and they see something. And that age is a blurry number. Because if a kid's been like traumatized all their life and they're 7 years old and they're like, damn, dog, that prison looks like better than my school. That's an elder in my community. I better pay attention. That's not a baby that's innocent, sadly, but that's somebody that I need to listen to, right? So it's like I have to shift and see when I do some of these poems, right? And they might have like a real, like it's gonna depend on where I'm at, how I'm gonna read it. So to you guys, I read this like this: White Liberal Supremacy Antics, Part 40.
White walls, white borders, white galleries, white conditions, white speak, white art.
I might use that same poem in a kid's room and be like, white walls, white borders, white guys, and they're cracking up because of my face. But I'm getting into their subconscious, and it's still the same poem, but it has a whole other tone, a whole other meaning, a whole other purpose, right? I'm just trying to activate their minds, artivate their beings, and create. And then they're like, cool, yeah, brown beans, brown tortillas, brown hope, brown, right? And so I'm activating that hope. I don't need to go in there and cut that hope and cut that innocence, you know. Does that answer your question? Kind of, sort of, maybe. And I'm always available for anybody that wants to talk more about these things. Online till like 4 in the morning. After 4, maybe I'm asleep. But, you know, to get into these conversations. Because they're delicate conversations, but it's also, like I said, about compassionate conflict and doing the work. There comes a point where you have to put that book down and you have to like be humble and say, I don't know, and step in there and try to do some work. But from a humble place of, I don't know. I've been doing this 20 years and I still say, I don't know. A parent comes to me, hey, can you help me with this? And I go, no sé, señora, pero voy a averiguar. I don't know, ma'am, but I'm going to go ask. But we have the tendency, because we're schooled, that I know the answer to this. And you close yourself off to what is in front of you. Oh, that band's playing for me, what? Last thoughts, last concerns, comments? Closing. And thank you guys very much. Appreciate you, appreciate your attention. They were like, you could do it now. I was like, no, let's go 2 hours. So thank you, because I know it's a Tuesday and you guys stayed with your attention, and I really appreciate all the energy that you put into that. So thank you so much.